Welcome and good morning. For this panel, we're going to look at the topic of market infrastructure, including as it's evolving in the digital asset and crypto asset space. Infrastructure, while not all, sometimes behind the scenes, is a key aspect of the operation and development of any financial market, not just in the digital asset space. It's really a question of who are the players, that permit markets to function at all and to grow. Infrastructure is relevant to such issues as what can be traded, where and how things can be traded, who can trade them, and significantly how assets can be held or custodied. Digital assets have seen the rapid development of an infrastructure that's separate in many ways from those for other financial instruments, including securities and derivatives. And a key question we're going to look at is where this development goes from here. Fortunately, we have a great panel set up to help answer some of these questions and give some thoughts on these topics. I'll let the panel members introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll dig into the substance. Tanya, do you want to start?
Sure, I'm happy to start. So I'm Tanya Shastri. I'm VP of Product for VMware for blockchain product portfolio. Just by way of introduction, I'll share a little bit about our product and business. So as a reference for my comments today. So we have an enterprise blockchain platform that our customers deploy their business critical smart contracts on. And we've worked and engaged and collaborated very deeply with several customers in the financial services space, the Australian Securities Exchange with their post-trade clearing and settlement replacement, Broadridge Financial Solutions with their repo transaction platform, the DLR, distributed ledger repo platform, and Deutsche Börse and Bursa Malaysia and others on dematerialization and other such projects. So it is through that collaboration that we've developed our platform, starting with core research out of our team for malicious fault tolerant consensus mechanism that's very performant and scalable and so on. We bring to that a lot of enterprise grade functionality, performance, privacy, capacity management, and then of course a lot of our enterprise grade support. Together that then makes this very robust platform that's also true to the blockchain primitives. And that's what enables our customers to really bring to production some of these business critical use cases in highly regulated industries. So that's a little bit of context, and I'm very happy to be here and looking forward to our discussion. I'll hand it over to the next person.
Talia, how about you?
Sure, thanks, Jeff. Talia Klein, I lead the commercial product team for digital asset custody at BNY Mellon. We are the first globally systemic financial institution to announce our intent to build a digital asset custody platform. So lead the team on how we commercialize those efforts here. Prior to BNY, I've been in the blockchain space for a number of years, actually leading the Broadridge program with digital asset holdings. And before that was at JP Morgan in the agency collateral group. So I have a lot of experience on market infrastructure and kind of the core technology underlying a lot of the pieces of the financial system that most retail investors and others don't necessarily see.
Thanks. Boris?
Yeah, hi there. I'm Boris. I'm one of the partners of the Chief Revenue Office of Copper. We're one of the largest custodians in the native crypto world right now. Apart from the pure custodial infrastructure, we also offer services around the prime and settlement side, especially in and around off-exchange settlements, which is one of the core pieces of our infrastructure, driving things forward in the space. Apart from that, of course, what has become like on the following on from Talia, the traditional financial services market wanting to be enabled as well. So we have quite an extensive enterprise offering on that front as well. Around this panel, I would love to talk about this, but unfortunately I've got like 16,000 NDAs wrapped around it, but it will be public hopefully very soon. Apart from this, the business started about 4 years ago out of a need for, at that time, institutional custody, not like Swiss mountains with dogs and guns and guards. So mainly focused on actively traded strategies. So we set this up 4 years ago. The ride has been great so far. What the business is now global, headquartered here in London, an office in America as well as in Singapore. We have around 280 people now Offer all sorts of services for crypto native firms. Apart from the pure custodial side and the settlement piece, there is like staking and DeFi, all sorts of beautiful things. But yeah, that is roughly it.
Last but not least, of course, Andre. You may be on mute, Andre. Just give us a second.
Can't hear you.
Unmute you. All right, well, while Andre working on that, I'll just introduce myself briefly. I'm Jeff Goldman. I'm a partner at Shearman and Sterling, focusing on financial institutions and financial services, which includes developments in digital assets and blockchain, other issues, but also focusing on U.S. regulation of financial services and financial products of all kinds, including in the securities and derivative space. Hopefully, Andre has reconnected. He may.
Brandon,
not, maybe we
be able to unmute him. Someone who set up the Zoom instance might be able to. It's worth a try, maybe.
Hi all, if I may, we'll just ask Andre to join and then rejoin. So please continue.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, let's dive into some of the substance. We're going to focus, I think, on some broad themes this morning, including, how our market infrastructure is adapting to the new digital economy and the crypto economy. What are some of the problems facing the development of digital and crypto asset market infrastructure as compared to traditional infrastructure? And what are some of the opportunities? And I think we'll focus initially on a couple of areas, including custody, broader issues of tokenization and trading. And let's maybe start with custody. How is custody changing and adapting to the new market environment? And maybe we'll start with Boris for his perspective.
That's a question that requires a very long answer. I'm going to try to kind of concise it a little bit. I mean, the market is changing extremely rapidly. If you have been in the crypto industry for quite a while, you actually know and have potentially seen what's going on. On that front, of course, from a custodial perspective, you're dealing with cryptographic assets, and the level of security that needs to be wrapped around this needs to be of paramount importance. There are various ways of how you can do this. And without going into too much of the tech stack here, because I don't think that would kind of, blow the borders of this conversation, but it basically is the way that we do it is MPC based. So it comes down to the fact of like how you secure your private keys, whereas you don't want to have any centralized risk, where at the same time you would like to have access fast, because after all, you're dealing with a very volatile asset class. Now, this is when we talk about normal crypto assets, right? Your Bitcoin, ETH, Cardano, and so on and so on. The infrastructure itself is, the base layer for this is custody. If you come from the traditional world, you understand that if somebody on floor 3 is punching in a trade, a JP, then you have a couple of people running around trying to settle that trade for about 3 days, which is a nightmare. Mainly in and around, with the likes of Boney and State Street and Citi and so on, the big players in that field. So what is happening now is a dramatic shift from actual traditional financial institutions moving in. And now I can say this with some confidence, because for 4 years, the industry has been like, bigging themselves up that this is actually happening, but it didn't at all. Things are moving relatively swift right now, especially with like people or companies like Boney announcing stuff like this and working on those solutions. And that comes, of course, with a whole set of other infrastructural needs that need to be solved, not only on the custodial side, but mainly on the pre as well as post-trade side. And those infrastructural layers are, perfectly suited for this when you just look at the blockchain technology itself. Definitely better than any MT500 messaging between those venues, where settlement cycles can be shortened dramatically. So that kind of touches also on the fact of tokenized securities, which of course is the big, that is ultimately where we're going here, which solves so many problems. I'm not going to go into many, but if you are a bank right now looking into this space, trying to figure it out, and you might have custody as well, or you've got assets sitting on your balance sheet that maybe are illiquid, you have the ability via tokenization in order to take them off balance sheet, which is a very, 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 very interesting proposition, and makes a lot of people's in the C-suite of those banks, the lights, the eyes are lighting up. So that needs a certain layer of infrastructure that we are providing. And, on the custodial side, I think we now figured it out. Globally, there are all sorts of different solutions, but ultimately the custodial layer is pretty much there. From where I'm standing, maybe Talia has a different approach to this, but that's basically where we stand.
Talia, what's your perspective as a participant?
Yeah, so I think if we think about I'll use Boris's words, the nightmare scenario, right? I think traditional institutions getting into this space, there's a lot that we can learn from the digital players who have been in these markets custodying and settling digital assets over the last number of years. As we continue to evolve and work with clients and partners in the space, I think if you look, a lot of the technology has been built by technologists, right? And there's new ways to transfer value. And I think if there are ways that we can collaborate, which I know, Jeff, you want to talk about later in the panel, there's opportunity there for lessons learned, both on, to Boris's point, the traditional side. So how do we leverage tokenized assets, but also on the crypto side? So bringing, stronger ways to think about risk management, as well as, how are we settling trades in a way that reflects into the broader picture of assets that exist, right? I think cryptos for the last number of years has been very much to the side and on its own, and the value that firms like BNY Mellon bring is being able to really integrate those assets into the broader, transfer of value and record keeping. We custody a lot of assets. I think as of yesterday morning, publicly 46 trillion in assets. So we know how to do custody, we know how to do settlement, and bringing those lessons learned from the past, 230 some years since Alexander Hamilton founded the Bank of New York, positions us well, and positions, I think, also the broader industry well to find new and effective ways of performing those activities.
Like just following on that point, because Talia mentioned something very, very important. The crypto industry, like the native crypto industry, has been built by tech people, and tech people normally don't understand finance to any mean, quite frankly. And normally it's the other way around as well. Finance people don't understand tech. That's just the base layer that you need to work with. There are certain things in the traditional financial industry, which I was also part of for 15 years, that are extremely efficient, like on the execution side, extremely efficient, extremely inefficient on the crypto side right now. There is also pre-trade, like when it comes to, anything in and around risk. This is extremely efficient in the traditional world. However, not in any shape or form properly implemented in the crypto world right now. However, the biggest pain point right now is post-trade. And that is something where, in terms of the infrastructure layer that is currently in existence, you don't really have solutions that are enabling this to the extent that a Millennium, a BlackRock, a Capital Group, like those guys would need, because it would blow everything that they currently have completely out of the water. Never mind the very, very minor fact of like that this market is 24/7, which no risk model right now in the traditional world really can cover, apart maybe from the FX side to a certain extent. So this is the big challenge that needs to be figured out. The good thing is that it has been done before, and we've seen that evolution in traditional finance. So there are a lot of things that can be taken from there in order to adapt it to this new world. And the technology layer, where Tanya is going to, definitely add a lot of value here during this panel, is in and around what is happening on the tokenization and settlement side, because ultimately it comes down to the fact of the technology layer, in this case blockchain. That is the important part. if you ask me personally, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, I mean, I'm a massive fan of Solana, I'd just say it out loud, but they don't actually matter that much right now in the current ecosystem. It's going to be interesting to see what Boney, State Street, JP, Citi, and all the other ones are choosing in order to tokenize their assets on. Never mind the sprinkle of DeFi, but I've got a completely different approach to that point anyway. I'm normally the party pooper on DeFi panels. But like those are the big challenges that need to be figured out, never mind the regulatory framework.
Yeah, and maybe if I can just add,
Yes.
The point about, the technologists and the financial folks and so on. So one point I think for all of us is the collaboration is definitely important, right? You need to bring the technologists and the financial folks together and build these solutions jointly, right? And just taking custody, for example, in the crypto world, there are certainly some primitives there that are very interesting and can be brought to the enterprise and highly regulated industries. But there's a lot that has to be added to it, and it has to be then made to deliver in the enterprise regulated space, right? I mean, the whole concept for even end consumers to move to really understanding what it means to have a private key and how important it is to secure it and so on, right? And now you translate that to the enterprise and there's various additional requirements around it, right? I mean, what happens, it's not an individual, it's an institution. And how do you, what are beneficiary kinds of requirements? What happens if there is an extreme case that something is lost and so on, right? So kind of translating things that are working in the crypto space or that have that are unique or pushing the boundaries in the crypto space and then bringing them to the enterprise is not an easy task. And really doing that well with the technologists and the financial folks who understand the end-to-end system, how these systems all work together and what's required, I think is really where we'll see the next big things happening, right? And Boris, your point about, for example, the post-trade side and so on, right? We are engaging super deeply with Australian Securities Exchange and Broadridge and Bursa and Deutsche Börse and so on, right? So that is, at the end of the day, I think what we need to make happen. So definitely looking forward to us talking about collaboration at the end of the panel.
Thanks, Andre. Appreciate your perspective on custody issues, maybe from a user of custody. But hopefully you can hear us now.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I got some connection issues here. I was hearing you guys, but you don't hear me. So I think that there will be some challenge to adapt. But one thing that I'm seeing these couple of years that we at BTG we are engaging with crypto. We start trading crypto in 2017. So we have some point of views from the user and also from developer, given that we are doing some new developments here for our clients. But I think the market's going through a process of convergence, okay, where to onboard big institutions and more traditional clients, there's the need to bring some of the new crypto technology, but put together with some requirements of compliance, regulation, and even some standards that traditional finance have already developed in these last decades. Okay, and actually there's some technology problems, but there's always some problems that don't have to do with technology. It's things that comes from the commercial relations. So you need to have governance, you need to have some type of insurance, you need to have some type of regulation. And I think the process that we are seeing now in the market is this convergence, which means maybe will not have that big disruption all of a sudden, but we'll start to see the new technology enabling, together with things that were already developed in traditional finance, enabling the growth in the market and big institutions stepping in and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's broadly speaking the view that we have for not only custody, but everything related to infrastructure and also service. Okay, I think Boris and Tanya mentioned the post trade. There's tremendous things that can be gained in terms of efficiency when you bring the crypto technology to traditional markets. Okay, I mean, I've been a trader my whole life, in having traded a lot of different asset classes like equities, FX, derivatives all around the globe. What I tell people is that, well, if you spend 2 weeks trading crypto, you never want to get back to trading traditional instruments because it's so much easier, so much more efficient. But definitely, there's still some void places that we need to fill in terms of especially governance and regulation to make able for big institutions to step in. I think that's the process where we are going.
The technology part is extremely important here because, like, I'm going to do this plug now for about 2 minutes, so you need to give me. But because there is nothing like this in the market. It's a product that we've built called ClearLoop. Now, when you talk about institutional adoption, you are, like everybody said on this panel, you know, the compliance and risk side is absolutely crucial for any of those players to start doing something in this space. Now, the conversations are, however, very, very short. If you look at the current infrastructure that is in place, there are some very interesting venues that you just imagine a Monday morning in one of the big global hedge funds, and they found an algo somewhere in a drawer. They overlay this to the crypto markets, doing some arbitrage, and basically see of how much money they make. Now everybody's excited. They then walk to the compliance officers, to compliance, and basically say, like, look, this is what we want to do. Those are the numbers. Everybody goes, that's fantastic. What do we need to do? Well, we need to onboard on an exchange that is situated and or regulated on the island of Barbuda, and we need to pre-fund everything there. So we need to send money there first, because the exchange, for some stupid reason, is also doing custody, which, if you come from the traditional world, is ridiculous, to say the least. So what that imposes you is two major problems. One of them is counterparty risk exposure, to the extent that you will have to do extensive operational risk due diligence with regards to the fact of having to pre-fund those venues. But second of all, what you're faced with is an incredible constraint of capital efficiency, because what you have to do is you can only trade with the money that is there. You can potentially negotiate some credit lines, but you ultimately are pre-funding a venue, and that is your pocket of money that you have. Normally, for sophisticated funds, you normally have a limit. This is for, like, we have about 450 clients, native crypto funds, and they have restrictions in there in terms of how much of the overall AUM is the maximum that they are allowed to put on a certain venue, due to the fact it being in Barbuda. So that's your first problem. But second of all, liquidity is not always the same, right? It dries up here, it amalgamates here. So what you want to do is you want to be active in terms of, like, how you shift your capital from one place to the other. And what you currently have to do is you need to do this on chain. That means that you need to withdraw your Ethereum from, let's say, Coinbase, and move it to, I don't know, Deribit, which means in this scenario, first and foremost, it's Ethereum. So it's going to cost you about $1,000, and it's going to take you hours because the network is congested, because NFTs are cool right now. And then subsequently, what you're dealing with is the fact that you are the money won't arrive. So you have to sit there and wait. And by that point, the trading opportunity is gone. So what we have built is ClearLoop, which basically means you hold your assets centrally in custody, and you only ping tradable balances to the venue. But the assets are never moving. And those balances are available in milliseconds, which, if you come from the traditional world, milliseconds is even too long, because they work in macroseconds. So what it ultimately comes down to, those are the infrastructural layers that will allow those institutional adoptions to happen over time, also when we talk about anything post-trade. Sorry for the plug, but I had to do it.
But I think what's interesting to what Boris has said, because having been in the space for many years, both on the custody side at a large bank as well as on the tech side, I think, to Boris's point earlier, like, the technologists that built some of these assets originally, had they come or had experience in the traditional space, would have been able to natively input some of these items into the assets themselves. And that's where I think that some of the work I know Tanya works on is really interesting, because leveraging that technology for how we think about the broader assets, right? How do you think about the 46.6, I think, trillion in assets that an institution like a BNY Mellon custodies on behalf of clients? How do you think about new paradigms in terms of those assets and the operational efficiencies that can be gained, right? So if you think about a corporate bond and all the corporate actions that are responsible off the back of those, and the number of people that work on those, and the number of issues that end up coming off of those, right? That's where, to use Boris's term, the nightmare comes in, right? Which is, if there's an issue with one of those, that causes significant issues for clients on the other end of that. And how, as we think about beyond just crypto, how do we take some of those lessons learned and encode those pieces on the assets themselves, right? I think that's where smart contracts become really exciting. I'll leave the controversial comments about DeFi to Boris, right? But if you think about smart contracts and the ability to leverage that technology to think about a new paradigm for developing assets and being able to encode that information, so all those processes and workflows can kick off automatically, I think that's where there's a huge amount of value, whether or not you believe in the crypto pure value proposition or not. And maybe Tanya, I don't know if you want to speak to any of those projects that you mentioned, because I think that's where the two worlds converge in a really unique way.
No, thanks, Talia, for setting that up. I think really well said, right? I mean, when you think about blockchain technology, the technology itself, it's not necessarily, I mean, it's not just crypto focused or one particular area, right? It's kind of a generalized technology that's bringing value in so many different ways. At the core, it's enabling these kind of shared, trusted source of truth for multiple parties to all engage on, right? And just enabling that trusted shared source of truth, and what you can think of as kind of mutualized infrastructure, where everyone's collaborating on the same platform, the workflow is standardized and is able to be automated across multiple parties. And when you think of a smart contract, it's essentially just business logic at the end of the day. So it could be almost anything, right? So when you think of it that way, now you're really bringing this technology to enable a lot of, efficiency, performance, and ability for these multiple parties, if there is a complex transaction that's going across all of them, to then be able to bring that efficiency to that end-to-end transaction and reduce errors, reduce the time it takes, reduce data reconciliation required if there are multiple different silos of data as they are today, right? So that then enables almost efficiency that you could bring to any multi-party application, right? So that's kind of, I'd say, the general way in which the technology can be brought to bear. And some of the key principles, right? The data integrity, the ability to have this malicious fault tolerance and really have, I'd say, the highest level of data integrity with a blockchain now is really very interesting when you think of digital assets, right? I mean, these digital assets are data, right? That's your asset. And now actually protecting that data, ensuring that the data integrity exists is paramount. So, those are the kinds of things the technology is bringing to bear. And it's from my perspective, as a technologist, the efficiency that can be gained even in existing systems is already, magnitude higher, right? So when you now bring new crypto assets and things like that into the picture, then that's broadens the pie even more. But a lot of the things that you can do with crypto assets, you can do with any high value asset, any traditional asset, and digitizing those assets then brings this similar kinds of efficiencies to the traditional financial space, if you can do all the things we've talked about, right? Ensure the reliability, ensure that there's low risk, ensure that all the compliance can be met and the regulatory requirements can be met, right? So that's really from a technologist perspective, what we are doing, right, is bringing those two worlds together: the primitives of blockchain with the enterprise grade features and functionality that are needed, so that the technology can then be broadly used across all kinds of assets and in in any multi-party application, even beyond digital assets, right? So that's
let me clarify something, because I come across now as this DeFi hater. That is not the case. Okay, I'm just very much a voice of reason here, right? Do I believe that in the future everything will be smart contract based? Yes, I do. I will be sitting on the airport. I will have bought my ticket, and the plane is delayed by 8 minutes because I didn't board in time, and every single minute automatically money comes back into my wallet because I bought an insurance contract on it. Yes. Do I believe that this will be the case in the future? Absolutely. Will we be able across, due to where we stand right now, on a Sunday morning sitting on my laptop in my underwear and basically quickly draw down my mortgage within a smart contract, and then ultimately having trading that against tokenized Apple shares in some AMM smart contract? Yes, that will be possible as well, but we need to be very, very clear on timelines and what needs to happen in order for this beautiful world to exist. And there is a lot of stuff, and the reason why I'm saying this is because lately I have to do a lot of those panels, and when it comes to this, it's like there are a lot of DeFi cracks on this as well. And the general, point is that in 2 years' time we will be there. Everything will be DeFi. There will be pockets like what Tanya is doing. There will be pockets of things that are going to drive this industry forward. But in order for this to be broadly accepted across all the different the financial markets, never mind, retail B2B markets, there is a lot of stuff that needs to happen, like a lot of stuff. So if people think that this is done in the next 2 years, I'm going to continue being that party pooper. Do I think that in 10, 15 years, we will be at a point where we will be able to do this? Yes, absolutely. Reason being is because we need to walk at the speed as what in this case, currently ruling the world, the traditional financial institutions such as Boni is. And to get things like this going from a regulatory and from a pure infrastructural layer is a big task. So that's the only thing that I'm saying. I love smart contracts, just to say this out loud, but when they will come into effect, that's the thing where
I think there's a difference, right? And Boris, I completely agree with your sentiments. There's a difference between smart contracts and utilizing the technology and believing that the world should be completely decentralized, right? I think a lot of the institutions, like a BNY Mellon, like a lot of the institutions that Tanya has mentioned, bring a lot of value in ways that most people can't even begin to understand, to the complexities of what it is that we do, right? And if you think about, I come from the collateral management space, right? If you think about a lot of the lending that happens in the DeFi space, there's a lot of pieces there that just from an investor protection standpoint that aren't being included in those smart contracts, versus some of the projects that Tanya mentions, right, that's automatically encoded in those smart contracts because of the fact that it's being built by traditional financial services folks who I think get a lot of shade in the crypto world. I'll speak for myself personally, right? Whereas, but then the pure crypto world wants institutions to get involved, and institutions cannot get involved until a lot of those items are included, right? So you think about things like the Aave KYC pool, right? That's very similar to what our traditional institutions do in terms of only allowing investors that have the proper due diligence done on them in order to protect the end consumers, right? Yeah. As a child of the financial crisis, right? We having been trained by people who managed through that, it's really no joke that, we need to protect consumers at the end of the day, because those are the ultimate kind of end state investors. And these products kind of build a lot of what ultimately affects those people.
This is what I'm saying. We're completely aligned on that front. And this is where the regulatory side will come in, because that's the only reason why they exist, apart from the fact of partially making your life a horror. But it is to protect the end investor. That's ultimately what this is all about. So that's why I say pockets and applications for this, for tri-party repos or whatever it is. Yes, absolutely. But broadly accepted, and the world is going DeFi. Like, also for the people that are listening into this, don't go down that route, because there is a lot of stuff that needs to happen first. And it will go through cycles, by the way. Just like the crypto industry goes through cycles, there will be applications now that, due to the advancements in technology, are suddenly not becoming very relevant anymore. And there will be significant downturn, and then there will be improvements made and it will go one level up. And that's the natural progression of any market. So I just wanted to say it. I don't want to be the DeFi hater here in any shape or form.
Andre, do you have a user perspective on the centralization, decentralization, DeFi thoughts that others have expressed? Or
Geoffrey, I can spend a week here talking about that, because it's the let's say almost philosophical questions that we deal on a day-to-day life here. But I do agree with Boris. And I go even a little further. This is not exactly just related to crypto. It happens in almost all new technology. If you look, for instance, for artificial intelligence, it's been around since the 70s, and or even before. And every 5 years or so, people comes to let's say to trend again, and people say, well, all your life will be changed in 2 years, and then. Things takes time, okay, and especially in the world that we are seeing now, that this is a fragmented technology that is being developed all around the world, and so things take time to people to understand and to build the proper not only infrastructure but the proper relationships and regulation that we need to have, and even if we can have, let's say, DeFi and crypto functioning as the way it is functioning right now, it's still a small niche if you compare to the overall markets and industries. And for crypto and DeFi to stop being just a niche and really gaining adoption and really going mainstream, that's what I think Boris and all the people here in the panel are talking about. We need to have this proper, I would say, not just regulation, but this proper boundaries being built. And this takes time. Okay, I can ask you guys some question here, because I've been questioning myself about this all decentralization thing, especially with DeFi. Okay. In my sense, we as human beings in organizations that are made by human beings, we are not used to deal with protocols. Okay, we are used to deal with people, with organizations made of people, with governments, so on and so forth. So in a DeFi world where we are trading, where we are lending, where we are borrowing against protocols, okay, I'm not sure that we are already ready for this world to go mainstream. Okay, and just to think about that, when something goes wrong, what you do? You sue the protocol? Well, I mean, there's some very simple questions that I at least my perspective, I didn't see that they have been answered before. Okay, or yet. Okay, so this will take time.
I think, Andre, I hear that a lot, right? So I think to Boris's language, right? The DeFi hater sometimes, when we have folks who come in and pitch us on, oh, we can do this collateral. And then the question is always in terms of collateral management, right? And I'm sure everyone knows this, but the question on there is always, okay, well, when the music stops, that's the language we always use, right? So when someone defaults, who's holding the bag or who's liable, and how does all that work? And when you talk to certain folks in the pure crypto space, they say, oh, well, the protocol, it's all on the ledger, or it's all in the blockchain. The judge is not going to care that when you say that, right? Someone, and that's where you really have to think about these functions to scale for some of those entities, like Boris mentioned, right? They don't want to hear, the protocol. It's not the world.
Do I find my assets?
Correct. And Jeff is the lawyer here, so he can probably speak to that better. But that's kind of the evolution here, and how do we advance is by bringing those questions into the space, and what is the role of a market infrastructure today, and when you evolve that into the future, how does that advance or change? And there's, I like to say, and the technologists that I work with hate when I say this, the technology is sometimes the easy part, oftentimes the easy part, right? It's complicated, but you can throw bodies and people power at that, right? In terms of all of the work that goes around that, whether that's legal constructs, or otherwise collaboration, quite frankly, like that's where a lot of the complexity lies. And that's not to say that the technology is easy, right? I know it's not, but when you have human beings who have to work together to think of new ways and collaborate, that becomes a different type of problem to solve that you can't just throw more smart people at.
Yeah, and just to be clear as well, as Boris mentioned, I'm completely enthusiastic about DeFi. Okay, I just think we have some things to build on the way to these to have adoption, and I think this is a process, right, guys? I mean, first we have the problems, then we have the solutions. To have the solution before the problem makes no sense at all. So people are building, people are developing, and we are encountering problems as every new technology encounters. So it's our job to be part of the problem solution. That's how I see it.
Yeah, definitely agree, Andre. I mean, and Boris, Talia, all of us are agreeing here, right? It isn't a rip and replace to this. Everything's going to just go like a switch from traditional to the DeFi world, and we know that's not happening. And the way things will progress, and that they're already starting to progress, is where the technology is inserted in the right way in the end-to-end systems and on the traditional side, some new pieces coming in from the DeFi side, right? And at the end of the day, they have to start coming closer together. And we're seeing that happen, right? I definitely feel there was a time when there was like polar opposites, right? It was either you're a quote unquote purist or you're a traditional guy, and you don't see eye to eye, you can't talk to each other, right? And now that's changing, right? We do see there's a bunch of things happening that are bringing both those worlds together. I'd say, Boris, things you're doing are maybe coming from the crypto world to the traditional. Talia's getting the traditional to the crypto, right? So both sides kind of starting to work together, right? So I do think that eventually that's what's going to have to happen, and it's great to see it starting to happen, because that's what the industry needs. And certainly we need the mindset that this isn't a rip and replace. It is a journey. You start at a good place, and you kind of, it takes maybe 10 years, maybe more, right? But that doesn't mean you don't start, and that doesn't mean there isn't very good value you can get now, right? And a lot of learnings and things like that require even to get started on the first leg of that journey, right? So I do think that mindset, especially in the traditional financial institutions, is definitely there, right? That there are good things you can do with the technology today. What are those good things we can do? And then what is the journey we take to get to where this can eventually go, right? So I'm just
very mindful of the audience as well, because if you do DeFi today, like what do? Like you would potentially use 3 different extensions. You have certain interaction layers, interact with a smart contract that potentially is not audited or doesn't really know, because ultimately at the end of the month, like I'm talking about personal experience here, it's absolutely amazing when you sit there, you have an AMM do this for you, and at the end of the month, you look at your yield and it tells you log in and it tells you, wow, I've just done 56% in a month. Like that's your first alarm bell right there. If that type of money is available for you to be made within a month, you know exactly that there are immense inefficiencies and enormous risks. Because you hear quite a lot right now about DeFi, and you hear a lot about NFTs and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, as a disclaimer for the audience, because there might be some in there right now that are doing this and are going to go like, screw this Boris guy, because I'm making 70% alpha every month. It's like, continue doing it. Just be mindful that the infrastructure layer has to catch up quite significantly for it to be sustainable. That's basically it. And that will be a process. So that's it.
Well,
so we should have to learn how to walk before we can run. That's basically the idea. Figure out centralized first before we go decentralized, in a nutshell.
That's a great way to sum up the panel, I think. I think we're at time, so I want to thank you all and thank the audience for listening, and hope we conveyed some interesting topics and interesting thoughts for the audience. Thanks, everybody, and have a